Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Digital Portfolios and exploring about what they are and how to make them effective in your classroom or school. I am Rob Dominic, MLTI Ambassador. You feel free to contact any questions about this to me at this address down here. Today's topic, we are going to dig into, what are some considerations to think about when you create digital portfolios? What are some things, especially ahead of time, to have planned out so that way you've got a better idea of school-wide norms that you might want to have ready, or just for yourself if you're in your own classroom. Considerations that you want to make sure that you have them covered or at least addressed before you dig into it too deep. That's what today's goal is going to be. And then next time around, we'll get into the tools and design elements for actually making the digital portfolios. So when you're going to create portfolios, digital portfolios, really the basic considerations are, what type of portfolio are you going to be using? What is the goal of it or the purpose of it? And then, how is it going to end up being used? So here we've got a couple of diagrams to kind of go over that. You've got types of digital portfolios. This image from our previous PD session about digital portfolios and what are the goals or the purposes of them. You've got the showcase, the process, the assessment, and then a hybrid, some sort of blend of them. And odds are it's going to end up being some sort of a hybrid. I think that's definitely pretty common. But again, I want to make sure that you stress, or I'd recommend stressing the idea of it being a process piece where students are able to explore about how they're learning, how are they growing, where are their misconceptions being addressed, pieces like that, and not just what's the final product of your work. And it would be nice to have a section like that to show their final product and showcase their work and their knowledge. But I think having that reflection piece that includes the process of them learning and developing and growing, I think that makes them much more impactful. So that's the first thing I would say to think about, discuss, with yourself or with other colleagues if you're doing this on a larger scale, about what is the goal of them? What do you want the digital portfolios to do for you? And once you have that established, the next piece is to kind of determine, and this kind of goes by grade level for the most part, how is that going to be done? You could have the whole group of the class to the teacher, where you have like one place that everybody posts and they have like a separate page on that, like a separate page on one website or a separate Google slide on one big slide deck. They have their own little spot that they can post there. Maybe it's digital portfolio isn't across all subjects or the entire grade. It's just that one project, and then you want to have a portfolio piece for that one project. So they have one slide on a slide deck that they all post on, and that's how it's shared to you. Again, that goes well almost in any case, but I think for the middle school or a little bit younger grades, I think that works out well for them. Or are you going to have them all make their own individual ones? Are they going to make their own website, their own Google site, or whatever resource you're going to use, and that's where they're going to continually post whatever work they have, and then share it to you separately. And again, that goes by your planning. Are you planning to have this done throughout all grade levels and throughout the years that students continue to do this, the longevity of it? Or do you plan on just doing it for this one project or for this one subject that you have them for? You can kind of weigh those options, thinking about that ahead of time, and that should set you up as to what type do you want the students to use. Again, if it's short term, one subject, one project, whatever it is, you might do the whole class having one spot to showcase. If it's long term, if it's over grade levels, if it's multiple subjects in one grade, if it's a little bit more expansive, then the individual digital portfolio might be the way to go. But then the other piece to think about ahead of time, especially with the digital piece, is the idea of how public do you want to make it? How private does it need to be, depending on the student's age? A lot of resources or restrictions are below age of 13. There's a lot of COPA requirements for resources for students under age 13, and it opens up a little bit more above that. So as you get to the older grades, not too much of an issue, but it's definitely something you may want to consider in the younger grades. How public does it end up being? Is if they're making a website with their work on it, are they just sharing it to you and then you can share that link to their parents? Is it more public? Do you want them to build it more professional later on? Do they use that same digital portfolio, or do they use those skills to start building a new one once they get to high school and then, polish it up a little bit more? Things to think about ahead of time that will make your planning go a lot easier as the years go on for the students as well as the teacher. Other deeper considerations here, besides those basic elements. Deeper considerations. First, standards. What will you use for requirements of it? Are you going to have them use district benchmarks? Are they going to use the standards, the grading standards that they have in the district, or grading requirements? Or is that going to be a driving force of this digital portfolio? I definitely recommend there being a balance if that's the route you're going. So that little icon here is a balance reminder, because you don't want to get too nitty gritty and have them post about every little standard potentially. You may just want your power standards or whatever it is that you term those in your districts, power strands or your overarching standards, whatever that may be. You may just want to have them report on those ones, and not every little nitty gritty piece along the way. That's, again, something to consider. And then maybe you don't use them at all. Who knows? Maybe you have the students create for a different reason. But that's something to consider as you're planning out digital portfolios. Organization. Are you going to have like a template that students use across the grade levels? Or will it kind of be each grade level do their own thing and then you bring it all together on a website or something, and they import their work into there and it's their own little design? Or do you ask for a standard structure, which has its benefits as well, right? If students know, for each standard or whatever it is, whatever units that you're reporting on that you want them to show, they know, okay, I need 2 artifacts that show my growth that I can reflect upon, and then my final piece. It does help to have some sort of routine that students know that they're going to be expected to add to their digital portfolios. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have things structured or organized ahead of time and planned out that way. And again, does that happen every grade level, or does that change for each grade level? Things to consider and discuss amongst your own schools. Kind of going along with that, naming conventions. This is an overlooked one sometimes, but then actually comes to be a big impact later on. How are you going to have students name things? What are the products going to be titled? How can they name it in their Google Drive if that's where they're using to store it, so they can find it easier? So all teachers know where to direct students, the folders that they're naming, as well as their individual pieces. What are they calling their final products? What are they calling their reflection pieces? What are they calling their process pieces that they're working on? Having some sort of standard naming for that, I think, makes a big difference, because then that way, viewers of the portfolio as well, they understand what's going on by having that kind of routine, or having that standard structure, standard naming, so they understand what they're looking at as well. Anticipate content. So again, the benefit of digital portfolios versus paper ones or binder ones is the types of artifacts that students can put into it. So have that in mind as you're planning for them, right? What resources can you use, or what tools can you use where students can import videos and audio and images, and scan or upload drawings, or easily insert their writing pieces or copy and paste it in there. How is it going to look? How are they going to house all those pieces on the digital portfolios that you're choosing? Definitely a big piece to consider. Whatever tech that you're using, to make sure that that it's going to hold those media content well, and it's going to be easily done, and it's not going to be a difficult thing to try to import or embed or insert or whatever it is that you're doing with those pieces to put them on your digital portfolio. And then finally, another deeper consideration is how are you going to dedicate time to these digital portfolios? If it's an important piece for you, it's an important piece that you want the students to view that way as well, then there's got to be some class time that's dedicated towards them working on it, asking questions, possibly collaborating, working with each other, getting reflection or getting feedback from you as the teacher. Right there has to be that dedicated time, because then it shows that this is an important piece that you want them to take seriously and that you want them to do well on. They might have some little things to touch up outside of class, but I think the majority of it to be productive comes in the class time. So think about how often are you going to give them time to update it. It may not need to be weekly, depending on your time and your classes and how often you meet. It might be once a month, maybe twice a month, probably at most, maybe once a month or every other month, once a semester or once a trimester, whatever, once a quarter, whatever grading period you're in. Sometimes that's too long. That's too long of a time for them, because they've moved on past pieces. Make sure maybe you do it at the end of every unit, right? That might be a pretty good one to use, because if you wait too long, the reflection has passed. If they need to do one on that, they're not, hopefully they remember it. That's the goal, right? But they may not be as deep into it. They may not remember their thoughts as clearly. So you probably don't want to wait too long. Once a semester is probably way too long. Definitely once a year is way too long. The summing up their year and making just one portfolio at the end of the year, that's quite a long time for them to do all that. So yeah, keep that in mind. Think about what's your time frame. What's a reasonable time frame? Again, I would lean more towards once a month or once a unit potentially. I think that could be useful. But that's kind of up to your own schedules in the individual schools. All right. So after you have all of that considered, after you have, your basic pieces here of how you're going to use it, what's the goal, how are they going to be shared, how is it going to be distributed, time frame, and you got, these other pieces of what's going to be included, how are we going to name things, what's the time frame for having them work on it. The final piece, and after all of that, is now choosing your tech. Right. You have an idea of what media you want them to use. You have how often. You have, an idea about how they are going to share it with you, if it's going to be a whole class or just individuals sharing it directly to you. So with those, you can then think, what's the best resource or tech tool for them to do this in? Is it Google Slides? Is it Google Sites? Is it Weebly? Is it Wakelet? Is it for younger grades, right? It's probably some sort of app like Seesaw or Class Dojo, where they're not doing as much other than just taking a picture and it's going to their profile, right? You can start the digital portfolio process with them when they're younger and have them understand that idea. And then when they're older, they can start to take more ownership of it, but they understand the process already of why they're doing it. So once you have all of that established, you can think about the tech pieces and what works best for you. And that's what our next session is going to be dedicated towards, is discussing the popular or recommended tech tools and resources that you can have for students to create digital portfolios. We'll dig into a few of them, a few options about what it looks like and how you could use it. And then hopefully that'll give you an idea of what might work best for you and your students in your situation. Okay, so again, thank you for joining. We appreciate your time here, especially towards the end of the school year. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. My email is on here. These slides will be linked in the comments, so you can get all these links on here. You can find these YouTube playlists for all of these PD sessions from all the ambassadors on here as well. You can see what we're offering, and then of course, form submission, a few quick questions, and then the link to the contact hours at the end of the form. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.